Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Farm Aid 2014. You look great out there. I'm really honored to introduce the folks on this stage with me. First, our Farm Aid board members, Willie Nelson, John Mellencamp, Neil Young, and Dave Matthews. We also have Carolyn Mugar, Farm Aid's Executive Director. Also joining us from the farm community, we have Scott Marlow of the Rural Advancement Foundation International USA. Who will now be known as Rafi. We also have Kay Doby of Hot Shot Goat Farm in Cameron, North Carolina. Craig Watts, a poultry farmer in Fairmont, North Carolina. And Russ Vollmer, an organic farmer in Bunn, North Carolina. Dorathy and Phillip Barker are hopefully joining us any minute now. They did get caught in a little bit of traffic, and those are their seats down there. They farm in Oxford, North Carolina. So for the farmers, I want to say thank you for taking the time off of your farm today. And for everyone else, I want to introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Fahy, and I count myself lucky to be on the Farm Aid staff now for 12 years. First time on this stage, so bear with me. Today, we are going to be treated to an amazing musical experience. And Farm Aid is a concert, but it's also so much more. Music fans, artists, and most crucially farmers are drawn from all over the country to the place where Farm Aid is each year. And usually we don't know where that is until shortly out from the show. So glad it's here this year. Our gathering spreads across multiple days leading up to the concert, and it culminates with the music and the message that we're here to celebrate today. It's a fellowship of farmers and farm supporters, truly with so many people who come back year after year, some of them 29 years now. It's a family reunion. In this place where we settle our roots for a time, we gather to empower each other, to invigorate our spirit, to keep sowing the seeds for change, to compare notes and share strategies for going about our work in our own communities, and to welcome new champions for family farmers. For those joining us at Farm Aid for the first time today, welcome. Today we might be third or fourth cousins, but tonight we'll leave closer with the music in our heads and the mission on our minds, members of this incredible family of the most committed people that I know. And I know you'll be back to Farm Aid again. Now I'd like to introduce the head of this family, the truest champion of family farmers, Mr. Willie Nelson.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Raleigh. Thank you, North Carolina, for bringing Farm Aid here. Thank you for making us welcome. We're glad to be here. And thank you for supporting the family farmer. We used to say a long time ago we were trying to save the family farmer. Now the family farmer is trying to save us all. And I think he can do it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Willie. We have a terrific lineup today, and all of the Farm Aid artists donate their time and their talent to help us stand up for family farmers each year. And many of them have joined us this morning, not on the stage, but in the front row. And I'd just like to acknowledge you all and your contribution to today. And when I call your name, if you can stand and wave to the audience. Jack White is not able to join us this morning, but is here for his first Farm Aid performance. We have Gary Clark Jr. Jamie Johnson. Preservation Hall Jazz Band. Hometown Band Delta Ray. Lucas Nelson and Promise of the Real. Carleen Carter. Todd Snyder. Insects vs. Robots. Raylan Nelson Band. Jesse Lanat. And the Dennis Alley Wisdom Indian Dancers. We're really proud of this all-star lineup, but this morning we start with our Farmer All-Stars. The Farm Aid stage is in service to family farmers. This sound system amplifies their voices. And this year we're using our video screens to bring you to their farms, to hear and see their stories, to see their roots. These are personal stories of the people on this stage, but overall they're representative of the challenges faced and opportunities grasped by farmers across the Carolinas, the Southeast, and the country. We're going to start with Dorathy and Phillip Barker's video. Dorathy and Phillip bought their farm in Oxford, North Carolina back in 1981, and like thousands of Black family farmers in the South, they have experienced discrimination that threatened their livelihood and resulted in a loss of land. But they didn't give up. They rose up for themselves and others. Let's take a look.
My husband and I bought this farm in 1981.
There were no buildings here but the dairy barn. We were in a large debt for farmland and then had to borrow more to develop it. And so we found ourselves struggling with FSA. And as I tell my counterpart farmers, no, your cows don't discriminate against you. Mine don't either. Well, where we have the problems is when I go to the bank and sit down there in front of the banker. It's much easier for you to borrow money. It's much easier for you to tell him that you're having problems. It's much easier. One of my friends told me, he said, well, I'll just get him on the golf course and we'll talk about this thing. Well, I didn't have the opportunity to get him on the golf course, nor any other course other than straight across the desk.
It didn't take long for me to realize that they were pissing in my face and it wasn't raining. Every time I would go in and take a seat, I would let them know who I wanted to see. He was not available. And then someone else would come in and they could go right in to see them.
We worked hard enough, but once you get the deck stacked against you, it's kind of hard to equalize and even that debt. And so we wound up losing some of the land.
And I started looking at the movement. I began to rally around and talk to different people, and I started to look at what was not happening in our little community, who the voices were we depended on to talk for us. And I found that there weren't any. And so we formed Operation Spring Plant out of a need. We learned that at some time rubber needs to meet the road. We began to form cooperatives. And we began to get people structured so that they could grow and sell fresh fruits and vegetables.
And if you can't show a young person that I can make a living, then you're just wasting your time. They have to come back to the farm to understand the wealth of the land. That's been our job, to bring ours back to see that there's real wealth here. The goals that we're trying to establish is lifetime things for the next generation. A guide, a toolbox for them to use moving forward.
Well, hopefully Dorathy and Phillip will be here to join us in just a bit, and we can save their questions for that time. But I think the connection to the land is universal for all of us. And so John, I'd like to ask you maybe a little bit about that, given your background. You've spoken and written about your connection to Indiana and your roots. Can you share with us some thoughts that you have from that video?
Well, when we started in 1985, when us three guys got together, I was noticing that, you know, I didn't know why the small towns that I had grown up in were going out of business. And after not looking very deep into the situation, it was obvious that it was because the small family farmer was going out of business. So towns like Freetown, Indiana, Crothersville, Indiana, all these places were no longer in business. And it was because the small family farmer was getting thrown off their land and by friends like the USDA and all of that, you know, trying to really make a land grab off of these people. So originally that's why I got involved, and Willie called and Neil and we all talked. I think we were all young enough and naive enough to think that well, we will just go out here and we'll do this concert and people will see the light and we'll make a big difference. And here we are, what is this, 27 years later? 29 years later. And Neil's still trying to learn his chords to a couple songs. I don't. I lied. So anyway, that's the reason I got involved with Farm Aid, and I think that's the reason all three of us initially were involved. Didn't really realize the scope of the problem. And the problem is always in motion. The problem is always changing. So it's those things that kind of eat away at me, you know, when the lights are out. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Scott, you've witnessed the loss of farmland and farmers in this state, North Carolina, firsthand. Can you tell us about more why this is happening and what the end result is?
Thank you, Jen. And I'm really nervous today, so I'm gonna ask a favor, which is I'm gonna ask that the folks in the audience who are the farm advocates that we work with every day, if you'd stand up and stand with me like you stand with farmers every day, like I depend on you every day. That's Carolyn, that's Shirley, that's Benny, that's Joe, that's Rhonda, that's Ben. Would you all stand with me? And I'll depend on you like I do every day. I want to welcome Farm Aid here to North Carolina. We're very excited that you're here. And Farm Aid started 39 years ago to address the pain of farmers and farm families losing their farms. Some of our folks here were at that concert and have been at most of them since. I work for an organization called the Rural Advancement Foundation International, and we're a part of all those folks who just stood up. All of us are people who, when a farmer in crisis calls the Farm Aid hotline, what they get is my phone number if they're from North Carolina, and we send someone out, Joe or Benny Bunting, who's been doing this since 1983, and has single-handedly saved thousands and thousands of farms. And they sit at the kitchen table and they figured out how to save the farm. But over time, Farm Aid has come to not just talk about the crisis, but also to talk about the great things and the great resilience and creativity of farmers who are facing a deck stacked against them, as they said in the video, and the deck is very much stacked against them. So one of those stories is about discrimination, and we're really glad to share this work with the Land Loss Prevention Project here in North Carolina and other organizations like the Farmers Legal Action Group. And those are the two legal organizations who took on the discrimination lawsuit when no one said it could be done. And some of those folks are here in the room as well. And while that deck stacked has been about discrimination, increasingly it's about corporate concentration and corporate domination. And one of the problems that we have is that these days, the organizations and the agencies and the politicians who talk about serving and protecting farmers, what they're really serving and protecting is the corporations that exploit farmers. It's just, and what they want to do is to set farmers against farmers and communities against communities, but this is not about farmers versus farmers. This is not about organic. This is about the farmer's right to exist. We're going to talk a lot about organic up here, and we like that because we like to feed our kids and we want a healthy planet, but it's first of all because the first folks who face that poison and face that pollution are the farm family and their children and the farm workers and their children. And so when we move to organic, it's to protect them as much as ourselves. And we're going to talk about local, and we can talk about local because we like buying local food. We like the experience of connecting to farmers, but we also do it because what we see is that corporate domination and that corporate control is what is running farmers into the ground. And so when we move to a local system, what it does is it allows farmers to get out from underneath that system and to stand up on their own 2 feet and connect with the markets without them. And so it's not about foodieism. It's not about our own health. It is about a healthy farmer's right to exist. If you want to understand the plan that corporate agriculture has for your farms and your food, look no further than the contract poultry system. About 97% of poultry in the United States are grown under production contracts. A contract where the farmer never owns a chicken, where the company is extremely adept at importing profit and exporting risk, cost, and pollution. Many of those farm families, many of those tables that we've sat at over the last few years have been people in abusive poultry contracts. And I'm going to finish by saying this. I have the pleasure of sharing the stage with some people I have deep respect for, people I deeply appreciate sharing the work and sharing this planet with. But with all due respect and thanks to the folks from Farm Aid, they're on this side of me. So I cannot tell you the courage that it takes for a person who stands to lose everything, whether it's because of discrimination or an abusive contract, to stand up and speak out. I know we have seen firsthand the toll that takes on the body and the soul when every day you face the loss of your farm. And so with that, I want to turn it over so we can talk to the folks.
Scott perfectly set up our next video, which tells the story of the heroes to his right, Kay Doby and Craig Watts, who have both been contract poultry growers. As you'll see in the video, Kay was cut off from her poultry company, but was able to adapt and stay on the farm. And Craig is nearing the end of his contract, and despite the danger of having that contract canceled, he is an outspoken critic here on this stage today of the industry and the way it treats farmers. Let's take a look.
Come on, Lulu. Come on, girls. Come on, girls. Come on, girls. Contract poultry is you sign a contract with the company that you own the houses and you pay for the houses and the equipment, and the company owns the birds, and they give you the guidelines to raise the birds, and you're on their schedule. You don't have a schedule of your own. What the grower's looking for is the day that you get these houses paid off, and then you can make some money. The bad thing about that is that time never comes, because when you get close to it, the company comes out and says, oh, we need new heaters. You need new heaters. So they got you over a barrel.
I paid them off in the fall of '04, and I think in April of '06 they started pushing the upgrade. So I've had about a year and a half of what it should have been. If you want to back out of it at some point in time, you're looking at either stepping away or going bankrupt.
They wanted me to convert them to tunnel chicken houses, which is close up the openings where they get the natural ventilation and just suck air through fans and keep them in darkness. I argued with them that I didn't have my houses paid for. I couldn't see sinking more money into these houses. Come on.
It's got to be a blind side.
You think? I think my being cut off had a lot to do with I spoke out against some of the practices that were being used against some of the growers. I was fortunate enough that I had my houses paid for because I refused to tunnel them. I had a few goats and knew that there was a market for meat goat. Right now we're inside of what they call a conventional chicken house, and I converted it into a goat facility. That kept me on the farm and doing something productive instead of just closing them up and letting them fall down.
You see Miss Kay turning her chicken house into a goat barn, man. That's what we need to do. I have very little debt at this point in time. I'm almost ready to pay off my houses for the second time. Not going to the bank and borrowing any more money. So I'm really interested in being a farm advocate. Not so much a bullhorn toting, that kind, but when people get in financial trouble, to let's get them out of it, because that's got to be a good feeling when you give somebody hope that didn't have any before.
Ready? Craig, you've called for fair contracts, transparency, and regulations to ensure protection of contract livestock producers like yourself and Kay. There was a point not too long ago when we had some hope that reform was coming to the system, and that seems to be stalling. We still have hope, of course, but it's a slow process. Can you tell us what's happening and what's at stake if that reform doesn't come?
Well, Scott stole my thunder. I'm nervous, and you were calming me down back there. So, but I'm totally humbled to be here today. This is the biggest stage ever, and if the Lord takes me home right now, I'm ready, because it won't get any better than this. So, but as far as your question is what you see when companies kind of get to the point where they're monopolies or monopsonies or just influence the markets in general. And what happened back in the 80s was they kind of neutered the antitrust laws. It kind of got to be that deal where the end justifies the means. Well, I'm sorry. The end does not justify the means when you're stepping on a farmer's back, when you're using deceit, and when you're using fraud. Now, if you don't think I'm standing up here telling the truth, Google poultry industry fraud, and then Google Craig Watts fraud, and tell me who you buy a used car from, okay? But what's at stake here, man? We are treading on dangerous waters where a few companies, control our food supply. I think it was Kissinger that said, control the oil and you control the nations, control the food and you manipulate the people. So, a lot of things, there's a lot of, I call it behind the iron curtain farming. I've got no problem getting all of y'all up right now and driving to my farm and opening the doors. The company would have a fit. It's bad when a $6 billion, $10 billion, $50 billion in sales companies is ashamed of what they do. And that's the only reason I can think that they will not open the doors. And, but what we need, there's only like 20,000 farmers. And what I found out, when you go to D.C. and you bring the truth in a thin wallet, you're not going to stay there very long. But a fat wallet and a lie will get you some doors open. But there's two things that influence D.C., and that's numbers and money. So what we need, because we don't have any money, we need the public to support these changes. As far as an individual farmer, as far as the poultry, I'm just to the stage in my career that that I really I don't see any rewind button for me. I mean, the scars are just there. We just hope that I can keep a young farmer from getting out of this, because man, it's a death trap. It's a $500,000, $600,000 worth of debt keeps a man very pliable. And just to put it in perspective, me sitting here holding this microphone in my mouth today, I just rolled the dice with about $700,000 worth of assets. It's that important, guys. Thank you.
Craig has been schooling me. Ooh. Well, we're going to take a quick break. welcome Phillip and Dorathy Barker of Oxford, North Carolina. Well, I think we'll finish up a little bit on Craig's story and Kay's story, and then circle back to you all. We did watch your video, but we want to hear your voices and ask some questions. Okay. Craig has been schooling me on what it means to be a contract poultry grower, and you also may have noticed he's quite a humorist. And one of the phrases that I've picked up is the meat mafia. And that is the power of the meat companies to go to Washington with those thick wallets and squash any regulations, any protections, any reform that we have been fighting for years with just their money. And Neil, that sort of calls to mind your image that you often use of our fight here on the Farm Aid stage, the David versus Goliath. And I wonder if you want to share some thoughts on the power in the food industry and how we can keep fighting against it.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's a great honor to be here on the stage with all of you. We saw your video. It's very inspiring. Thank you very much for that. We look forward to hearing what you have to say. Sorry you couldn't be here to see it yourself. You know, all the things we're talking about here are all about power. It's all about corporations telling us what to do. It's very basic. And there was just legislation that was squashed in Washington last week to change that, called the turning down the Citizens United bill. You have a senator here, Senator Burr. Okay, he voted to turn this down. He voted to keep corporations in charge. He needs to stand up and be counted by you people. And anybody who votes for that guy is voting for continuing the problems that you already have. It's a huge issue, what's going on in this country with corporations controlling everything. Corporations, when you talk about lobbying dollars, that's the corporations paying people to pay people to vote. That's the corporations doing all of the things that are undemocratic. They've challenged the democracy and they've eroded the democracy here in America to a point where it's almost unrecognizable. And we were very close to changing it by turning down this Citizens United bill and reversing it so that corporations couldn't vote as people. Corporations aren't people, they don't have kids. They don't have kids they're looking out for their grandchildren or their kids are going to college. They have a 3-month window they're looking out for profit. And this senator, Senator Burr, voted to continue all of the things that we're talking about today. Made it impossible to change anything that we are fighting. All the changes we want to have happen can't happen without changing that bill. That's why we keep failing to have the change we crave. And that's why when you go into the farms, it's all you can do is try to do something good and try to do something clean, try to do something that makes sense in your life and just believe that eventually it's going to make a difference, and it will make a difference. You just have to keep the faith and keep on doing what you're doing. And remember that your soil, and I know all of you probably know this anyway, but even worse than cars in this country, the cause of global warming is the soil. It's what's happening with our soil from using all of the chemicals and all of the things that we have to use to have these contracts that you're talking about. They tell them what food they have to use. It's not just where to put the birds and what the building is like. It's you got to feed them so much of this food, so much of that food, and that's it. And this food is all crap. And the food has to go somewhere after the chicken eats it. And it goes back into the ground. And then it goes into the rivers. And it goes to all these places, just like all of these corporate farms that are out there for chickens or pigs or whatever it is across this country. And whenever you try to change that and we try to make it better, we come up against the lobbying in Washington that stops it from happening. And the reason that happens is because corporations are in control of the government and they want to make money for the next 3 months. It's just so basic. You have to fight back against the people who are causing this problem. And we've been doing this for, 29 years, someone said. It seems like, 29,000 years sometimes. We thought this was going to be great. We love Farm Aid, but we don't love that we're doing Farm Aid. It's not a celebration, it's a mission to change what's going on. And what you people are doing, the cleaner you can farm, if you can find clean seeds, if you can get seeds that aren't controlled by one of these corporations like Monsanto, the worst of all of those corporations, if you can find a way around doing that and put your hand in the ground, they need you. They can't live without you. Don't forget that they need you. They just want to squash you while you're working and make it so that you have no identity and no say in what you're doing. But you love the land and you want to do this. So just try to do it as cleanly and as purely as you can with the cleanest seeds and the least amount of fertilizers. You know, God put a lot of great fertilizers on this land in the first place. This place was in balance before we started doing all of this. Things used to be right. And the job is to get it back. If we can return it back, then we can actually start to reverse climate change and do all kinds of things. But the corporations are the villains here. And the politicians like your Senator Burr and others like him are the ones who are voting to continue the duress that you are all under, that we're all fighting every day, that we all live through our day trying to figure out how are we going to get by this. That's the big picture that I see from all of the things that you guys are saying and what your video said and everything. And we're dedicated to standing with you as long as it takes and longer. We will be here until hell freezes over doing this. We've shown that we're continually going to do this. And we respect you for what you're doing. And it's a beautiful thing that you're doing with the land. Just keep trying to improve the way it happens and make it cleaner and make it better for everyone. I'm an organic kind of guy myself, and if you go towards that, it cleans the land, and that cleans the earth, and that cleans the air, and that helps to bring us all back. But first of all, you have to clean Washington of these dirty politicians who are outside of democracy. Thank you for Farm Aid.
Neil said that we're not just a celebration, and that's entirely true. And we started off talking about the challenges that we face here, even at the day that is our biggest celebration out of the year. But it is important to celebrate the successes and the inspirations, and I want to talk to Kay about that. Coming out of the contract poultry business, being outspoken, testifying before Congress, and then being terminated, and then having the courage to do something different. What was your inspiration to reuse those poultry barns for goats? How did you make it happen?
Well, I wasn't the only one that was terminated at the time. It was Pilgrim's Pride. They decided they needed to file bankruptcy. So under the bankruptcy laws, they come out smelling like a rose. And there was about 45 farmers that their contract was terminated. And within this corporation business, there's an unwritten rule that if you grow for one company, these other companies are not even going to look at you. And they put a black mark on these farmers because they said, we cut them off because they don't do a good job. That was not the case. They cut them off because they needed to cut their bottom line somewhere. And you take a man that's his way of supporting his family, and he has done everything that these people said to do, and maybe they're $1 million in debt. What are they going to do? And sad to say, some of them take their own life. One in this group did that. But I decided, they're not going to kick me down. I'm not going to lose my farm. I'm going to take these houses and make something out of them. And going back to the government, the legislature. The farmers cannot walk those halls and talk to those legislatures like other people can. The people that are paid by the Pilgrim's Pride, by the Purdue, they're there walking those halls every day. I never will forget walking into one of those legislatures' office and was telling them about something, and they said, well, how does Purdue, how does Pilgrim's Pride feel about this and all? And I said, let me tell you one thing. They didn't vote you in office. Their home office is in Texas.
Thank you, Kay. Dorathy and Phillip, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Wanted to ask you a little bit more about Operation Spring Plant. We watched your video and learned about the discrimination you face and the land loss you suffered, and I think everyone here was probably inspired by your commitment to keep on, not just your land, but in building your community. So tell us about what Operation Spring Plant does and how you got it going.
Operation Spring Plant started in 1987 with the assistance of Dr. Benjamin Chavis and Reverend Z.D. Harris and Reverend Leon White of the United Church of Christ. And the mission of that, at that particular time, was to save North Carolina's only 2 remaining black dairy farmers. And so after we went on TV and different news media came and supported us and got our story out, more farmers came to us and said, this is what we need. We need the exposure. We need someone fighting for us. So I tell people when I go and speak, I fight for those farmers, those black farmers and small white farmers, the farmers who have lost their will to fight, but they also need a voice. And so that is how Operation Spring Plant got started. We actually, when we formed, we looked at the things that, the barriers, the plights of the black farmers, lack of financing, lack of getting your funds in a time that you could put in your crop. What farmer can, once you put in your application, why would you want to start farming in May or June? And that was how late some of us received our money from Farmers Home Administration. And we wanted to kill that, that bank account that you have. What is that? That the supervised bank account, because for us, that was just a control measure. You know, once you can go to a place to get a supervised check and you have to sit there from morning to evening. So these are some of the things of why we started Operation Spring Plant, to get people to know about USDA's services, programs and services. And we started Operation Spring Plant so the people could have a voice. And that voice, a collective voice, because no one farmer can capture and hold an audience, just like no one farmer can capture and hold a market. So with starting with Operation Spring Plant, we had been linked with Raleigh in years back. The past year, we had linked with them and gone all over to speak. So we decided to get together and find out more of the plights of our people, what opportunities were out there for us. So then Operation Spring Plant was formalized. And then we began to travel nationally and internationally to get the word out of the plights of black farmers and small white farmers in North Carolina, well, all over, and what their plights were. And so once we did this, we looked at some of the things that we were lacking in, and we were lacking in markets, and we were lacking in the infrastructure. How do you get the infrastructure so that you can sell fresh fruits and vegetables? Where are your markets? How can you get housing, decent housing? How can you get, you know, we look at some of the things that, the different programs, as far as, say, NRCS, or say at that particular time, some of the programs there, we couldn't even go into our offices or we did not know those people, so we didn't get the services that we have today because of the changes that the grassroots group, like Operation Spring Plant and other groups throughout the South that fought for the rights of small farmers. We couldn't go in those offices and get to even put our names on the book to say we're trying to get a loan. So with Operation Spring Plant, meeting people like Ralph Page and some of the other nonprofit groups and landlords, it gave us, because all of those, everyone have a focus in their communities. And if you focus on those plights, you'll begin to grow. Everybody have a section and a territory. And, you know, so with Operation Spring Plant being sort of statewide, we began to bring in the, you know, everybody's needs. And some, you know, some of the larger white farmers told us, we don't need your expertise, but what we do need from you is your markets. A lot of people do not know that 95% of the markets are for larger white growers. Black farmers only have 5% of the markets. But we were told, you might as well let us have that 5% of that market since you're not doing anything with it. So that is one of the things that Operation Spring Plant is trying to do, is to get small black farmers to come together in an aggregation to form cooperatives, to learn how to get your certifications, to learn about the market, and also learn that when you take the management from your farm, then to go out and market, down goes your business. So we're trying to get farmers where you'll let your farm create jobs, involve your family in those jobs, and involve the community. So this is pretty much what Operation Spring Plant is about, and our Youth in Today's Agriculture, which is a national. The reason for the Youth in Today's Agriculture is to carry on the age-old occupation of farming, but in today's world. Those youth we're looking at, that they will carry on the family farm, but make it a profitable business, not just a farm from a shoebox. To learn to be agriculture, agritourism, agribusiness. And if you can't do that, look at being an agronomist. Something dealing with the soil, just stay connected to agriculture, being a food, something that you can sort out, be a grader. But learn something about agriculture and learn what the soil and the land means to you. And so that is pretty much what Operation Spring Plant is about.
Thank you, Dorathy. We know that change has to come from both sides of our food system, the farmer and the eater. The next video highlights examples of new and emerging markets in North Carolina built on strengthening that connection between farmer and eater. Let's take a look.
We're first-generation farmers and bought this place 33 years ago. We just kept pushing and pushing and trying new things in different markets and different crops until we finally got to a point where we felt that we had a combination of things that would carry us. We couldn't have all our eggs in one basket. We had to have multiple marketing outlets and multiple crops so that we could weather whatever economic or environmental storm might come, and that's been the real key to our success, is that we are very diversified. Farmers market is our favorite. We like the people, atmosphere, and it's retail. 70% of our business is farmers market. The farmers market is the town hall. Community all through the small farm movement is very important, but farmers market is sort of the highest point of that. We could be the finest, best sustainable farmers on the planet, but without a good market, we'll starve.
We work with over 100 farmers throughout the state, enhancing the vitality of their farm and the longevity of their operation and their family. Our company is based completely on receiving orders from our customers, and so product is barely harvested before all of our orders come in. And so the reason we're able to return 80 cents for every dollar back to the farm that produced it is because we have zero budget for shrink, which is the product that you lose to its perishable nature. And that is a world away from what traditional produce companies do. We're making a dent in the food system from the farmer side and also the consumer side. You know, a lot of young kids are finding that farming can be really exciting, and we have younger farmers coming in all the time. When we first started, a lot of our farmers were older. They did not want their kids to be farming, and that's what we're seeing has changed. The secret's out that it's really important to people to know where their food is grown, and most importantly, how it was grown and who is growing it.
Dave, we are pretty close to your roots in Virginia, here in North Carolina. And there, you have helped grow a thriving local food hub in your hometown. What inspired you to do that work, and what are the results you're seeing?
I'm going to stand up like Neil did. I don't know if I can talk as cool as he did, but I'm going to give it a whirl. First of all, it's an honor to share the stage with y'all farmers and to be in front of you, because you guys, it sounds strange to say, but it's true that you're revolutionaries. And it shouldn't be that. It shouldn't have to be that you shouldn't, but it's part of a fight that I think is enormous, and the front line is the farmer, and the people that suffer the most are the farmers. In Virginia, you know, my mom always said, well, you know, it's a bumper sticker, farmland lost is farmland lost forever. And so some farmland came up for sale, and I bought it and kept farmers on it for a while, and then also trying to get food to people and trying to connect farmers with consumers. We helped start a food hub in Virginia. But I think, and that's doing well right now in Charlottesville, Virginia. The food hub is cooking, and farmers are hopefully doing a little better in that area because of it. But what I think is amazing is this revolution of farming that is like the farmers market, and they're growing everywhere. I know you guys are seeing it, but I think this is the example of where the future of farming is at. We need to cut out the giant middleman that is crushing everybody, because we need to connect us to the goat farmers and the poultry farmers as closely as possible. And one model is the local farmers market, but we need to find more models, and we also need to spread the word, which is why it's good to be here, that the corporate model in this country and all over the world doesn't care about our country, it doesn't care about our people, it doesn't care about our children, it has no children, it only cares about money. And not money 100 years from now, or 100 months from now, or a year from now, money right now. And that's all it cares about. But it has, unfortunately, the media and the politicians. It's a rare politician that will stand up and have tomatoes thrown at them because everyone else knows what you do is you go the way the corporation says you go. So this is a revolution that has to be fought underneath. We have to fight it beneath sort of under the table, because it's owned. The conversation that is public, that's in the media, is owned by the same people that are trying to force our farmers off the land, or at least to handcuff them to regulations that make it unfair to them. Anyway, so support your local farmers market, I think.
Thank you, Dave. We have one more video, and the doors are opening shortly, so we're going to move it along quickly. Our next video tells the story of Vollmer Farm, a fifth-generation working family farm that transitioned, like so many farms here in North Carolina and across the Southeast, from growing tobacco to growing good food. Historically, tobacco was one of the most important crops in North Carolina and across the South, and there was good reason for it. There were strong federal programs that protected farmers in growing that crop, and when those programs went away, forward-thinking farmers were inspired to innovate. And Russ, who joins us today, his father John was one of them. Let's take a look.
Generations was a tobacco farm. Most of the farmers in this area, that was the crop they grew. It was the crop that paid their bills, sent their kids to school. In the 80s and 90s, competition put a lot of pressure on farmers to figure out whether they were going to continue to grow the crop or not. My dad looked at his own tobacco crop, his own tobacco future, and made decisions to go in a different direction. Took a lot of guts to move away from a conventional way of farming to an organic system when really there wasn't a lot known how to do that. He was producing the best quality produce that he possibly could under an organic system. Consumers appreciated that, and a real bond was set between grower and consumer. My dad decided that he wanted to sell direct to that consumer instead of having to fight so hard to sell wholesale. It's wonderful to see that type of desire from consumers to want to ask the question, do you know a local farmer? We're very much a production farm with fruits and vegetables, but then we have passion for agritourism and bringing people here. If they can pick up something or see something growing, especially the young kids that really need to know a little bit more about the food that they eat. Part of what we do here is really try to focus on ag education. You don't make a whole lot of money on collards or beets. School tours really helps to support a lot of the crops that we grow. One thing that I have discovered is just how intimate it is to grow the food that people eat. There's a real connection that you can make to people, and they depend on us. They count on us. They want to make sure that the food we produce is safe for their family.
Scott, I can't watch that video and not go first to Scott to just talk about John Vollmer very quickly and tell us about Russ's dad, and then we'll have a question for Russ.
Well, what you're seeing is, to talk about the role of tobacco for North Carolina farmers is not to negate the health effects of tobacco, but it is to talk about the protections that were provided by those programs. And for Russ's dad to be visionary enough to walk away from what was a fully functioning program, and when it was, in North Carolina, sort of like being a cattleman in Texas, or if you're a tobacco family, you're a tobacco family. You can grow some other stuff, but you're a tobacco family. And to make that transition and to have the vision to shift over to something that was putting something back in. And when I started in this business, John was who everybody went to for how to do things. He was the first one. He was the person who brought people out to the farm. He was an incredible leader. And what you're seeing on this stage with the end of the tobacco program, what you're seeing on this stage is two very different visions for the future of North Carolina. It's an industrial vision that says that the land and the farmers and the people are a factory and are disposable versus the kinds of community and building in the soil that we're looking at here. And we're in that choice. And one of the reasons why we wanted to invite Farm Aid here this year is because we are in that choice right now. Right now, we're choosing what North Carolina's agriculture and what our future and what it's going to look like. And what's going to make that choice is going to be three things. It's going to be how people eat, how they vote, and what they're willing to raise hell over. So John Vollmer was one of the people at the beginning who really stepped out on his own, and you see courageous people across this stage. But we're just all really glad to be here with a group of people who have been kicking ass and raising hell for family farms for a long time. And we want to say thanks.
And Russ, you take on the reins at Vollmer Farm, and you lead that fifth-generation farm now that is so connected to the community. What is that relationship between the farm and the community? It seems to me that you feed each other.
Well, I feel the weight, of the shoes that I'm filling, and my dad had the ability to see well in advance of other people in agriculture what he wanted to do and the difference that he wanted to make. And so we were a very committed tobacco farm, 3.5 generations. When he stepped away from that, the tobacco industry was still very solid. And it took a lot of guts. But he did that. And the reason why I think he did that is he realized that he wanted to make a personal connection with the people that came to Vollmer Farm, because farming was personal to him, as it is with me and every one of the farmers up here as we live it each and every day. Can we create a relationship in a personal way between the farmer and the customer? And so that's when he created the community-supported agriculture system, where he figured out, okay, I don't have to take $0.50 for the product that I grow and all the time that it takes to grow. I can get paid full dollar, okay, by going directly to that farm, to that customer. Again, a lot of guts to be able to do that, because nobody in at least Eastern North Carolina was doing community-supported agriculture. And I know we're running late, but I want to say this. For the Vollmer Farm, it's all about the kindergartners and the first graders, okay? And we have to reach those people, those little ones, okay? And so you can imagine on our school tour groups, you know, a kindergartner only has a certain amount of, attention span, right? But we do reach them, okay? We do, and we can reach those kids. I had a middle school kid. We had a middle school group come to our farm for a tour. And I ride around on the farm and we tell them about how we grow things and that sort of thing. 12-year-old kid asked me, do we grow broccoli and cheese? And I said, well, yeah, we grow broccoli, and I'll tell you how cheese is made too. You know, so that's the challenge we have. But we're going to win that battle. We're going to win it.
Hell yeah. Thank you. Carolyn, speaking of community and challenges, do you want to say a few words?
Actually, just a very few words because we're running late. But Farm Aid, as you all know, is a fabulous concert, and it's a lot more. It's really a community of farmers. And just 2 days ago, we, along with our strong local partners, we brought together a group of about 200 people for a gathering which was called Looking Back and Moving Forward Together. Looking at this region, at the Southeast, we said we cannot come here without taking note of the very abusive history that so many people have been under for these many years, and of the extraordinary struggles and ingenious battles that they have won. So we looked and we talked with each other, and we, as always, people came out more and more committed to working together and knowing that we all have to count on each other. So, Farm Aid is an invitation. It's an invitation to everybody. We work with every farmer that calls our office, with any farmer that anywhere wants to come in the door. And Willie, Farm Aid is the DNA of Willie Nelson. And that DNA is, come on in. And I would like to ask you what your invitation would be to folks here today, and folks beyond here today.
Well, again, I'd like to say how important it is that the family farmer stays on the farm, because he grows our food. When you look at your food in the morning, your breakfast, you wonder, where does it come from? Does it come from 1,500 miles away, or could you have gotten it from your local farmer? So that's what we need to think about. And if we do, we'll, the farmers are tough, and so are y'all. We'll all stick together and we'll win. Thank you.
While we have the mic here on the stage, we just want to give some quick thank yous to Walnut Creek Amphitheater, Live Nation, Raleigh, and the entire state of North Carolina for welcoming Farm Aid with open arms in a way that we have just loved. We're coming back. A special thanks to Janine Smaltz and Peter O'Donnell here at Walnut Creek and the entire team, and also to Wilson Howard at Live Nation. We also have to give a special thanks to Scott Marlow and Rafi and Savvy Horn at Land Loss Prevention Project, and Roland McReynolds at Carolina Farm Stewardship Association. Willie always says we go where we're wanted, and you all made us wanted. This organization is led by the Farm Aid Board of Directors, our 4 board artists on the stage, in addition to Paul English, Mark Rothbaum, Joel Katz, Lana Nelson, Richard Fields, David Anderson, and Evelyn Shriver, many who are here today. We're thankful for the partnerships that we have with our sponsors and to the many companies who make very generous in-kind donations that help make this concert a success. Thanks to the amazing staff, interns, and volunteers, and the production team like Ron Stern, who's trying to move us from the stage right now so we can get his show started. Ron's been with us, and many others have been with us for 29 years. And thank you all for being here today. We want you to stay involved throughout the year. Go to our website, farmaid.org, homegrown.org, get involved, dig in. And while you're here today, dig in and get your hands dirty in the Homegrown Village. We have exhibits to get you engaged in food and farming issues. And we're very honored to have Jim Hightower, who's down here. Humorist, author, rabble-rouser. He'll be hosting the media briefings, but they're for everyone, not just media, issues briefings, so we can dive deeper into some of the issues we talked about here today, and that'll be in the farmyard stage in the Homegrown Village. So also, get hungry if you're not already. We've got homegrown concessions on the menu featuring food from family farmers, probably our most impressive menu yet in terms of the number of farms in this area that we are sourcing from. We are really proud of that. So thank you all for supporting Farm Aid, for being here this morning, and enjoy the show.